All right, let's dive right into this explainer. We're looking at a massive, and honestly, kind of tragic shift in entertainment. A shift that didn't just change where we watch our favorite stories, but completely rewired the stories themselves. Today, we're figuring out why streaming didn't just kill the movie theater. It might have actually killed movies, too. Seriously, think back for a second. Remember actually going to the cinema in the 90s or early 2000s? The lights go down, that absolute silence hits, and you're just sitting there in the dark with a bunch of strangers, totally disconnected from the outside world. You were there to experience something together. That was the standard, right up until Netflix told us we could just stay on the couch. And you know, at first, we cheered for the algorithm. We thought, yes, democratized viewing, we won. No more $20 tickets, no more commuting, no more annoying people texting in the row ahead of you. But as we're about to see, that victory was a total illusion. We traded that completely immersive magic for this overwhelming, endless menu of thumbnails that actually ended up diminishing the entire art form. Section 1. The data behind the death. Let's look at the staggering numbers that convinced us streaming was a total victory in the first place. Look at this trajectory, it's wild. Back in 2007, Netflix officially kicks off the streaming era, and suddenly, cable is sweating. Fast forward to 2019, and theatrical attendance hits a 40-year low, and that's before any global lockdowns. Then 2020 hits, the pandemic accelerates everything, and studios just start dropping movies in theaters and on our TVs on the exact same day. But by 2023, the honeymoon is officially over. Streaming profits are stalling, subscriber numbers are flatlining, and audiences are looking around asking, why does everything feel exactly the same? To really grasp the sheer scale of how much we consume now, get a load of this number. In 2023 alone, Nielsen data shows American audiences streamed a staggering 21 million years worth of content. 21 million years. That's a 21% jump from just the year before. And while we were streaming millions of years of video, traditional Hollywood was literally bleeding out. Global box office revenues utterly collapsed from over $42 billion in 2019 to just $12 billion in 2020. I mean, the victory looked complete, right? Theaters were empty. But like we just talked about, streaming profits suddenly hit a wall. So if we're watching more than ever before, why is the industry panicking? What went wrong beneath the surface? That brings us to Section 2, the infinite content problem. Because streaming completely rewired the economic incentives of why movies even get made. To really get this shift, we need to look at these massive media conglomerates. They're basically operating like the old Hollywood oligopolies from way before the 1948 Paramount decrees. Back then, the government literally had to step in and break up the studios because they owned the theaters too. They controlled making the movie and showing the movie. Well, look at today. We've got a modernized version of that exact same vertical integration. 6 massive studios control about 90% of the domestic box office, and now, through their own streaming apps, they control the pipeline straight into your living room. And here is the crucial takeaway. Studios didn't pivot to streaming because they wanted to give you better art. They did it in a sheer panic to plug the massive hole left by dying cable networks. In the industry, this is called the pay TV hole. Think about it. At the peak of cable, networks like ESPN were raking in nearly $9 billion a year for Disney just from standard fees. When people started cutting the cord, that money vanished. Streaming was thrown out as a desperate life raft to replace that steady cable cash. By 2023, we had something like 90 different streaming services all begging for our attention. It's an infinite content trap. See, under the old theatrical model, scarcity forced quality. Bad movies died fast because you had to actually leave your house and buy a ticket, so word of mouth was everything. Good movies built momentum. But with 90 platforms giving you infinite choices for a flat monthly fee, that urgency is completely gone. When you have 10,000 options, you don't pick the best film, you just click whatever the algorithm spoons out to you next. Infinite choice creates zero urgency. Section 3. The engagement metric trap. This is where we see how streaming created a highly flawed definition of what makes a movie successful. The incentives are completely misaligned now. Theaters measure success with a very simple question. Did people actually pay to see this? Streaming, on the other hand, measures success by total watch time and subscriber retention. Those are not the same thing. Think about it. A sprawling 3-hour cinematic masterpiece that makes you cry and challenges your worldview, that's a theatrical success. But to a streaming platform, a 42-minute comfort rewatch of a sitcom that you leave playing in the background while scrolling on your phone, that is a streaming success. The studios optimize for the metrics that matter to them, not for your viewing experience. And this total lack of transparency is basically breaking Hollywood's business model. Streaming platforms hide their real viewership data. Because of that, the back-end compensation models, how actors and creators actually get paid, totally collapsed. Remember that massive Scarlett Johansson lawsuit over Black Widow? That's exactly what this is. Plus, if a studio can't measure the exact return on investment for one single movie, they stop taking risks. They pivot to content recycling, endless spin-offs, sequels, and familiar IP, because it's safe. Moving to Section 4, the prestige collapse. Let's face a really harsh reality about the quality of the content itself. It's an uncomfortable truth, but theatrical exclusivity actually forced ambition. If a studio is dropping $165 million on a massive movie like Dune, it needs a theatrical run to justify that cost. The filmmakers literally have to push the boundaries of art to convince you to leave your house. But streaming? Streaming just prioritizes platform retention. They'll take that same massive budget and spread it thin across an 8-episode bingeable series just to make sure you don't cancel your subscription this month. The goal isn't to make a masterpiece anymore. It's just to generate a steady feed of content. Ambition just flatlined. Which brings us to Section 5, Death of Exhibition Standards. We really need to look at the structural damage done to visual storytelling itself. Because it's not just the business side that changed, the literal art of making a movie changed. Nielsen data shows that a whopping 37% of all streaming time in the US happens on mobile devices. Just think about what that means for a director. It forced cinematographers to completely alter how they shoot. You can't craft a sweeping, subtle cinematic landscape shot if a third of your audience is watching it on a 4-inch screen on the subway. Look at this breakdown. Shooting for a phone or a tablet means you have to abandon nuanced color grading. You abandon those expansive wide shots. Instead, streaming cinematography leans heavily on tighter framing, incredibly high-contrast lighting, just so you can see it on a glossy, uncalibrated screen, and heavy use of digital LED walls, like the tech used in The Mandalorian, to save money on practical sets. Movie theaters used to have strict baseline standards for lighting, sound, and projection. Streaming just tossed all of that right out the window. So step by step, the actual art of cinematography was degraded just to fit smaller budgets and smaller screens. They use tighter framing so you won't notice the digital backgrounds. They crank up the contrast so you can actually see what's happening on your phone in broad daylight. And they use rapid editing and cliffhangers just to stop you from clicking away. This right here is exactly why a modern blockbuster often looks so flat, dark, or just plain muddy when you try to watch it on your iPad. Now, to be completely fair and look at this impartially, streaming executives make the case that offering multiple ways to watch is ultimately a win for the consumer. Netflix COO Greg Peters made this exact point, saying that watching at home serves a totally valid, relevant purpose for different people at different times. The argument is that accessibility and pure convenience are just as valuable as the old-school theatrical spectacle, and that this model brings diverse stories to a global audience that maybe never had access to them before. So we're left with this really fascinating paradox. We traded the absolute magic of theatrical scarcity for infinite convenience. We have literally all the content in the world right at our fingertips. But as you scroll through those hundreds of endless thumbnails tonight, desperately searching for something to watch, ask yourself, are you actually engaging with a piece of cinematic art, or are you just feeding the algorithm?